name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. The seminar hall in downtown Chicago was packed, the kind of place where people usually came to hear CEOs and professors, not to watch a clash of faith and logic. Crystal lights shimmered above the stage, and a quiet tension filled the air like a storm waiting to break. Sharp heels clicked across the polished marble as Isabella Hart stepped into the spotlight. She was famous, an American billionaire known for buying companies, crushing competition, and never apologizing for it. Tonight, she wore a tailored black suit, clean lines, no softness, no mercy. Her smile looked perfect, but it didn't feel warm. She took the microphone with steady hands and scanned the audience like she owned the room. "I didn't come here for small talk," she said, her voice calm but edged like a blade. "I came with a challenge." Behind her, the massive LED screen lit up with numbers so big they didn't feel real, billions of dollars displayed like a prize in a game show. A wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd. Some people leaned forward, some frowned, some looked offended, and some looked tempted. Isabella pointed at the screen with a slow, confident gesture. "If any Muslim here is brave enough to debate me, Christianity versus Islam, then I will put this money on the table." She paused, letting the tension rise. "If Islam wins, you can have it, and I will publicly convert." The room erupted in shock. A few gasps, a few quiet laughs. Some people glanced at each other as if wondering whether this was real or just an expensive stunt. Isabella lifted her chin slightly, her confidence growing. "But let's be honest," she continued. "I don't believe Islam can win. Christianity stands on the greatest proof of love. Jesus sacrificed himself for mankind. He was crucified to erase the sins of the world." A heavy silence fell. Some Muslims in the audience clenched their fists. Some lowered their eyes. Others looked like they wanted to stand but didn't know how to begin. It wasn't fear of speaking. It was fear of being humiliated in front of cameras, strangers, and a woman who seemed trained to destroy people with words. Seconds dragged like minutes. Then, from the back row, a small hand rose. At first, people thought it was a mistake, a child playing around. But the hand stayed raised, steady, unshaking. A boy stood up. He couldn't be older than 10. He wore simple white clothes, clean and modest, and his face was calm like he didn't care about the size of the crowd. He stepped into the aisle and began walking forward, slow but certain, as if each step had purpose. Whispers spread fast. "Is that a kid? Where are his parents? This is insane." A few people laughed, not cruelly at first, more like disbelief. But the laughter grew louder when Isabella noticed him. The boy reached the front and stopped near the stage, looking up. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look excited. He looked steady. "My name is Marwan," he said clearly. Isabella burst out laughing, sharp and unapologetic. She pointed down at him like he was entertainment. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. "This is what Islam sends to fight me? A fourth grader." Marwan didn't flinch. He kept his eyes on her, calm and respectful. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to ask questions." The laughter began to fade. Something about the way he spoke, soft but confident, made the room quiet again. Isabella crossed her arms, trying to look amused, but her smile tightened. "Fine," she said. "Ask." Marwan took a slow breath, then spoke with the same calm tone. "If Jesus is truly God," he asked, "then what exactly happened on the cross?" The room froze. Even Isabella blinked, like she wasn't expecting a child to open with something so direct. The audience leaned in as one body, as if the air itself had shifted. Marwan continued, his voice still gentle. "Did Jesus end his own life? Or was someone else stronger than him?" A silence so deep fell over the hall that the sound of a camera shutter somewhere in the back felt loud. Isabella's smile returned quickly, forced but confident. "He chose it," she answered. "He sacrificed himself to save humanity. That is love." Marwan nodded once, like he understood her words. Then he asked again, even more softly, "If forgiveness is real, why would God need blood to forgive?" A ripple moved through the audience. Confusion, curiosity, discomfort. Marwan lifted his eyes. Isn't God powerful enough to forgive without anyone dying? Isabella's jaw tightened. For the first time, her confidence didn't look effortless. It looked like something she had to hold together. And in that moment, the crowd realized this wasn't a joke anymore. This wasn't a stunt. This was the beginning of a real battle. Quiet, respectful, and dangerous. Isabella held the microphone a little tighter, the way people do when they sense control slipping. She forced a laugh, but it came out thin. You're asking big questions for a kid, she said, trying to win the room back. But Christianity has answers. Jesus died by choice. He took the punishment we deserved. Marwan didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked up at her and asked, if God is perfect, why would he need punishment in the first place? The audience shifted in their seats. A few people exchanged glances. Isabella's eyes narrowed, but Marwan kept going, careful and calm. In Islam, he said, God isn't limited by rules above him. He doesn't need payment to forgive. Mercy isn't a deal, it's a decision. Isabella lifted her chin. So you reject the cross, she shot back. You reject the greatest symbol of love. You deny the Son of God. Marwan nodded slowly, as if he had expected those words. Can I ask something simple? He said. When people say Son of God, do they mean God has a real child, like humans do? A murmur rolled through the crowd. Isabella replied quickly, it's spiritual, not physical. Marwan's expression stayed gentle. If it's spiritual, he asked, why does the wording confuse so many people into worshiping Jesus? The question landed harder than any insult because it wasn't aggressive, it was honest. Isabella opened her mouth, then paused, and the crowd felt that pause like a crack in glass. She recovered fast. Jesus performed miracles, she said firmly. He healed the blind. He raised the dead. No ordinary man does that. Marwan's eyes didn't change. I believe Jesus performed miracles, he said. But in Islam, miracles don't make someone God. They show that God supported them. He gestured lightly, not dramatic, just clear. Many prophets had miracles. Moses split the sea. Abraham survived fire. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received revelation that transformed a civilization. Were they all God too? A few heads in the crowd nodded without meaning to. Isabella's lips pressed together. She shifted her weight, and the neat perfection of her black suit suddenly looked less like confidence and more like armor. Christianity has the Trinity, she said, speaking faster now. God is one, but exists in 3 persons. Marwan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked softly, how can something be 1 and 3 at the same time without contradiction? Isabella's eyebrows tightened. It's a mystery of faith. Marwan nodded once. But shouldn't God be clear? He asked. If God is meant to guide all people, not just scholars, shouldn't his truth be simple enough for the human heart to recognize? The hall stayed quiet, almost painfully. Isabella looked around, sensing that the audience was no longer fully on her side. She tried to laugh again, but it didn't land. Then she straightened, taking a breath like someone stepping into a courtroom. Okay, she said. Enough. It's my turn. Her eyes locked onto Marwan, sharp and determined. You talk about one God, she said. But how can one God create something as complex as the universe? Isn't that idea too simple for reality? Marwan didn't hesitate. The complexity is in creation, he answered, not in the creator. A perfect God doesn't need pieces or partners to be powerful. Isabella paced 1 step, then stopped. What about destiny? She asked. If God already knows everything, do humans have free will at all? Or are we just robots pretending to choose? Marwan replied calmly. Knowing isn't the same as forcing. If a teacher knows a student will fail because the student refuses to study, the teacher's knowledge didn't cause the failure. The choice still belongs to the student. The crowd reacted quietly, some impressed, some uneasy. Isabella's face tightened again. She was realizing something she didn't like. This kid wasn't guessing. He was prepared. Isabella raised her voice. Fine. Let's attack the foundation then. Why should anyone believe the Quran is holy? It came in pieces over time, shaped by history and culture. Marwan's tone remained steady. Revealing it gradually was wisdom, he said. It guided people step by step, and its core message stays the same. One God, accountability, mercy, justice. That consistency isn't what humans produce across years of pressure. It reads like guidance. Isabella's mouth twitched. She wasn't smiling anymore. A small bead of sweat appeared near her hairline under the bright stage lights. She leaned forward slightly, voice sharp. Then explain Jesus, she demanded. Why is he so honored if he's not God? He was born without a father. Doesn't that prove divinity? Marwan answered gently. A miraculous birth proves power. But whose power? If someone being born without a father makes them God, then Adam would be even more worthy of worship because he had no father and no mother. Yet we all agree Adam was human. That line hit the crowd like a flash of lightning. Some people gasped. Some laughed softly, not mocking, more like shocked respect. Isabella blinked hard, the way people do when they're trying to regain footing. She was still fighting, still refusing to fall, but now her confidence looked strained. She inhaled and began firing questions faster, like bullets. Prayer in Islam. The direction of worship. Rules. Rituals. Doesn't your religion restrict people? She asked. Doesn't it trap them in limits? Marwan replied calmly. Rules can protect. A road without boundaries becomes a crash site. God doesn't set guidance to suffocate humans. He sets it to save them. Isabella's voice rose again. And heaven and hell? She challenged. Isn't that just fear-based control? Marwan's face remained serious. Justice matters, he said. Without final judgment, many victims never receive fairness, and many oppressors never answer for what they've done. The afterlife isn't fear, it's balance. The room stayed silent, but it wasn't empty silence anymore. It was heavy, thoughtful silence. Isabella's shoulders lifted slightly as she breathed. Her eyes looked tired now, but she pushed on. She kept asking until the number reached 25. And Marwan answered every single one. Not with shouting. Not with insults. Not with arrogance. With calm logic, respectful tone, and unwavering control. By the time Isabella reached her final question, her voice had softened, almost against her will. So tell me, she said quietly, who do you believe Jesus is? Marwan looked up at her with genuine respect. A great prophet, he said, a noble servant of the one true God, loved, honored, but never worshipped. A long silence wrapped around the hall. Isabella stared at him like she was seeing a new world forming in front of her eyes. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The audience didn't move. No one dared to break the moment. Finally, Isabella swallowed hard. Her voice came out low. You answered my 25 questions, she said. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the microphone again. She stared at Marwan, like she was looking at the only person in the room who didn't fear her. Now, she whispered, you said you had 10 questions of your own. Marwan nodded once, and the room, already shaken, braced itself. Because everyone could feel the next round wouldn't just challenge Isabella's arguments. It would challenge her entire life. Marwan took a slow breath, not like someone preparing to attack, but like someone preparing to speak carefully. He looked at Isabella with calm eyes and said, my questions aren't meant to embarrass you. They're meant to help us think clearly. Isabella didn't reply. Her face was still, but her grip on the microphone had tightened. She nodded once as if giving him permission, though the permission felt weaker now, like her authority was fading. Marwan lifted his voice just enough for the back rows to hear. First question, he said. If Jesus is God, why did he pray to God? The hall froze again, the kind of silence that feels physical. Isabella's mouth opened quickly, but she hesitated. He prayed out of humility, she said, forcing confidence into her tone. Marwan nodded politely. But humility belongs to servants, he replied. Prayer is dependence. The true God depends on no one. Isabella's eyes flickered, and she blinked hard. She tried to smile, but it didn't hold. Marwan continued, steady as a clock. Second question, he said. If Jesus is God, why did he say there were things he didn't know? Isabella's throat tightened. She shifted the microphone closer to her lips, but her voice lowered. He limited himself, she answered. He chose not to use all his power. Marwan's tone stayed gentle. Not knowing is a limitation, he said. Limitation belongs to creation, not the creator. The audience leaned forward like one body. Even people who had come just to watch drama now looked serious, locked into the exchange. Marwan asked the third question. If God is eternal, he said, how could Jesus die? A quiet ripple passed through the crowd. Isabella stared at him, her jaw tightening. He died as a man, she said, almost snapping. But his divine nature remained. Marwan didn't flinch. Death is still death, he said. If God can die, even for a moment, then God is not truly eternal. Isabella's breathing became visible. The camera lights above the hall made the sweat on her forehead shine. Marwan lifted his eyes again. Fourth question, he said softly. If Jesus died, who was running the universe? That question didn't sound like a debate point. It sounded like a simple child asking something that adults forgot to ask. The crowd reacted with small, stunned noises. Tiny gasps, quiet inhalations. Isabella's lips parted. She looked toward the ceiling as if searching for an answer hidden in the lights. The laws of nature didn't stop, Marwan implied. The sun still rose. Gravity still worked. Life continued. Isabella lowered her eyes again. Her confidence was no longer standing tall. It was shaking, trying not to collapse. Marwan continued. Fifth question, he said. If Jesus was God, why did he feel fear and ask to be saved from suffering? Isabella swallowed hard. Her eyes looked glossy now, like tears were gathering behind her strength. He felt human pain, she said quietly. Marwan replied gently, fear is human. Pain is human. God is above fear. The room felt like it had stopped moving. Even the air conditioning hum sounded distant. People weren't reacting loudly, but many faces showed the same thing. Something was changing inside them. Marwan paused for a moment, then asked the sixth question. If forgiveness requires blood, he said, what about people before Jesus? Were they unforgivable? Isabella's fingers tightened so hard around the microphone that her knuckles looked pale. She didn't answer immediately. Marwan continued respectfully. Even before Jesus, prophets taught repentance. A perfect God can forgive by mercy, not by needing someone to die. Isabella's eyes dropped. The billionaire who once stood like a queen now looked like a human being trying to keep herself from breaking. Marwan asked the seventh question. If Jesus is the Son of God, he said, does that mean God has descendants? Isabella whispered, it's symbolic, but her voice sounded tired, like a person repeating something they had memorized long ago. Marwan nodded. Family belongs to humans, he said. God isn't part of creation's biology. The eighth question came softer. If Jesus was worshipped, Marwan said, why did he himself worship God? Isabella didn't respond immediately. Her mouth moved slightly, but no sound came out. Her eyes were wet now. The crowd noticed, and the entire hall felt even more fragile, as if one wrong noise could shatter it. Marwan's tone stayed calm. All prophets called people to worship one God, he said. They never asked to be worshipped. The ninth question landed quietly but deeply. Why would God need to become a human to guide humans? Marwan asked. If God is all-powerful, he can guide without reducing his greatness into weakness and suffering. Isabella's shoulders shook once, like a tremor. She tried to breathe, but her breath came out uneven. Marwan reached the 10th question, and the hall felt like it was holding its heartbeat. If Jesus is God, he asked, why was his core message the same as the prophets before him? Worship one God. That line didn't sound like a debate. It sounded like clarity. Isabella's grip loosened. The microphone dipped slightly. She stared at Marwan with trembling lips, and then, without warning, tears rolled down her cheeks. A quiet sound left her throat. Not a cry, not a scream, but a broken breath. I never questioned it, she whispered, barely audible. I just accepted it. Marwan didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He stood still, letting her speak, giving her dignity. The crowd was silent, but not cold. It was a silence full of emotion, full of people feeling something they couldn't explain. Isabella wiped her face quickly, embarrassed by her own humanity. But it was too late. Everyone had seen the truth in her eyes. Then she sank slowly onto her knees on the stage, as if her strength had been removed from her bones. It wasn't weakness. It was surrender. If this is true, she said through tears, then I've been worshipping a prophet, not God. The sentence hit the room like an earthquake. Some people covered their mouths. Others lowered their heads, overwhelmed. A few cried quietly. Marwan stepped forward one small step, still respectful, still careful with distance. Guidance isn't about winning, he said softly. It's a gift from God. Our job is only to search honestly. Isabella looked up at him with red eyes, but they were different eyes now. No arrogance, no mockery, only confusion, and a strange, desperate hope. The hall, once filled with tension, now felt transformed, like a courtroom had turned into a place of truth. Isabella spoke again, her voice shaking. If I want to follow this truth, she asked, what do I do? Marwan's answer was gentle but clear. It begins with sincerity, he said, with surrender to the one true God. He looked at her calmly. If you're ready, you speak the declaration of faith. Isabella closed her eyes. Her tears fell non-stop, but her voice became steady, word by word, as she repeated the declaration after him. In the crowd, people stood slowly. Some lifted their hands in silent prayer. Others cried openly, not out of excitement, but out of witnessing something rare, humility breaking pride. Isabella opened her eyes again, her face still wet, but her expression had softened, like someone finally breathing after years underwater. She whispered, almost like disbelief, all that money, and I never found peace. Marwan looked at her with calm kindness. Peace isn't bought, he said. It's found when the heart recognizes the truth. Isabella stared at the suitcase of money displayed beside the stage, the same money she had used like a weapon at the beginning. She lifted her hand and signaled to her assistant. Bring it here, she said quietly. The assistant rolled the suitcase forward, placing it in the center of the stage like an offering. Isabella's voice trembled as she spoke again. This was my promise, she said. Islam wins. Take it. Marwan stepped back instantly, shaking his head with firm sincerity. I didn't come for money, he said, and the crowd felt the weight of that sentence, because it proved something even bigger than arguments. Truth couldn't be bought. And in that moment, everyone realized the final chapter wasn't about a debate anymore. It was about what happens when a powerful soul finally becomes honest. Marwan's refusal didn't sound dramatic or heroic. It sounded simple, like the most natural thing in the world. I didn't come for money, he repeated, his voice steady. I came because truth matters. Isabella stared at him, almost stunned by the idea that someone could stand in front of billions of dollars and feel nothing for it. Her hands trembled as she wiped her cheeks again, but the tears kept coming, not from defeat, but from relief, like something heavy had finally fallen off her chest. The audience remained completely still. No one clapped. No one cheered. It was as if the room understood that applause would ruin the purity of the moment. Isabella inhaled shakily and looked down at the suitcase one more time. Then she looked back at Marwan, her voice quieter now, almost fragile. Then what's the point of all of it? She asked. What's the point of wealth, power, fame, if none of it can fix what's missing inside? Marwan didn't answer like a preacher. He answered like a child who had learned something early. A full bank account doesn't guarantee a full heart, he said gently. Sometimes the emptiest people are the richest. Isabella swallowed hard. Her shoulders rose and fell as she fought to steady her breathing. I spent my life chasing success, she admitted, staring at the floor as if confessing to herself. I thought winning meant being untouchable. She lifted her face slowly. But tonight, I feel like I've been blind. Marwan spoke softly, careful with every word. Sometimes God guides people through moments they never expected, he said. Through honesty, through questions, through humility. Isabella's lips parted slightly, and her voice came out trembling. I insulted Muslims, she said. I mocked your faith in front of everyone. She looked around the hall, her eyes wet again. I'm sorry. The words didn't sound like a scripted apology. They sounded like something pulled out from deep pain. Across the room, some Muslims placed their hands on their chests. A few whispered prayers under their breath, not for victory, but for her healing. Isabella turned back to Marwan. How are you not angry? She asked, voice cracking. How can you stand there and still speak with respect? Marwan's face stayed calm. Because guidance isn't earned by insulting people, he said. And truth doesn't need cruelty to be strong. Isabella nodded slowly, as if her mind was being rewired in real time. I thought logic was everything, she whispered. But my logic was built on pride. Marwan's voice remained gentle. Logic without humility becomes arrogance, he said. And arrogance makes the heart reject what the mind already knows. The stage lights felt warmer now, even though nothing had changed. It was the atmosphere that had shifted, like the room had moved from conflict to clarity. Isabella looked toward the crowd, her voice shaking but honest. I want to say something, she said. Not as a billionaire. Not as a speaker, just as a person. She paused, searching for the right words. I came here with pride, and I'm leaving with faith. A quiet wave of emotion spread through the audience. Some people cried openly now. Others lowered their heads, overwhelmed by the weight of a heart changing in public. Isabella stepped closer to Marwan, careful not to tower over him. I always thought truth belonged to the powerful, she said softly. But tonight I learned something I can't forget. She managed a small, broken smile. Truth can come through the softest voice. Marwan smiled shyly, almost embarrassed by the attention, as if he didn't want the moment to become about him. Isabella glanced once more at the suitcase. Her assistant still stood nearby, waiting for instructions. Isabella raised her hand slightly and spoke firmly. Donate it, she said. Every dollar. Her voice didn't carry arrogance anymore. Carried clarity. To shelters, to families in need, to people who are drowning in debt and desperation. The assistant hesitated for a split second, shocked, then nodded and stepped back. Marwan's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't look impressed by the money. He looked impressed by the change. Isabella wiped her cheeks again, then looked down at herself. The black suit, the polished image, the armor she'd worn her whole life. This suit used to feel like power, she whispered. Now it feels like a costume. Marwan's voice stayed soft. Real power is choosing truth over ego, he said. Isabella nodded, her eyes red but peaceful. And what about me? She asked quietly. If I want to live this new life, what should I do next? Marwan answered gently. Learn, he said. Ask questions. Keep your heart open. And remember God in your daily life, not just in big moments. Isabella took a trembling breath and nodded again. I don't know how I'll face the world after this, she admitted. My friends, my business partners, the media. Her voice broke. They'll say I lost my mind. Marwan's gaze stayed steady. When someone finds truth, he said, the world always tests them, but peace is worth the test. Isabella stared at him, tears shining again, but now they weren't heavy. They were clean. You're 10 years old, she whispered, half laughing through tears. And you taught me what no university, no boardroom, no fortune ever taught me. Marwan lowered his eyes respectfully. I'm not special, he said. I'm just saying what I believe is true. The moderator, who had been silent almost the entire time, finally stepped forward, his voice gentle. Tonight, he said, we witnessed something rare. Not a debate, but a transformation. The crowd remained quiet, as if everyone knew that loud celebration would cheapen what they had just seen. Isabella turned to the audience one last time. Thank you, she said softly, for letting me be honest. Her voice trembled again. I came here thinking I was above everyone, but I was the one who needed guidance. Marwan stepped back toward the aisle, preparing to return to his seat. His walk looked exactly like it did when he first came forward, simple, calm, steady. But now, every person in that hall watched him like he had left a mark on their lives. Isabella stood alone under the spotlight for a moment, her face still wet, but her posture different, lighter, as if she didn't need to hold herself up with pride anymore. And as Marwan disappeared into the crowd, the hall remained silent. Not because people had nothing to say, but because, for once, they didn't want to ruin the truth with noise.